Beth, as I started saying earlier, but was distracted by the Facebook live stream, we really wanted to do this today because things are changing at such a rapid rate that there is just no way to be certain and to have the quote right answer. Where, you know, and Beth, you've said it before many times, the thing that was true when you look at your first email may not be true by noon. Things are constantly changing. And yet there is this sort of very human need to answer those questions, to have an answer for people, to be able to put your finger on the pulse of what's happening, or at least seem that you can do that. So Beth, you know, do you want to dive in and expand on that drive?
Yeah. So I want everyone to think about for a minute think back to a time when you were asked a question that you didn't have an answer for. What happened to you in that second? What popped into your head when you were suddenly on the spot with a question that you don't know the answer for? So for many of us, a couple of things might have happened. And if you think of something, you can go ahead and pop it right in the chat room, because I would love to hear what your thoughts are. And in the meantime, I'll go through some of the things that that come up for me. Number one is we don't want to look dumb, right? Our ego drives us with the desire to feel competent, to feel like we're in charge, to feel like we have the answers. So sometimes when we get that surprise question that we don't have an answer to, we fake the answer, or we come up with something, right? Because we don't want to look dumb. The second one is that whole middle school effect of what are they going to think about me if I don't know, right? So you might be stuttering and stammering to come up with something. And one that I'm seeing a lot in the people I'm coaching is they don't want to let the other person down, or they want to be able to pull them out of discomfort as quickly as possible. Are there going to be layoffs? What happens if we get called back to work and I don't have childcare? Is my program going to be cut, right? How are we going to keep from, be protected from getting sick at work? How are you going to protect us from that? And I had a client recently that I was coaching, and at the beginning of the whole COVID thing, this person really put out kind of a guarantee to their deeply concerned staff of, don't worry, I will do everything in my power to make sure that you have everything you need during this time. And then a request came in, which was beyond the scope of what the organization could do for that person. And he had to go back on that answer. And that caused a big rift within the staff, a ton of cleanup that had to be done. And it really sort of damaged, at least temporarily, and who knows for the long term, a sense of trust. So we want to really be able to talk about how you can use a framework for getting into a place where you have a go-to strategy for when you get asked unanswerable questions that you can really lean into and you can depend on. So yeah, Sasha?
So I just want to expand on that a little bit. I think that there's like the part of us that is compassionate and you know, using the definition of the word, somebody who recognizes the difficulty someone else is going through and wishing to relieve that, you know, the desire to relieve pain and suffering is really strong. And sometimes you simply cannot change the situation. You can't do something to fix it. But the one thing you can do is negotiate what is true right now. So staying in fact, staying in, like these are the facts of the moment, and working with that is far more powerful than a promise to make everything better for the other person.
And if you want a really good model for how to keep yourself in facts and keep yourself out of story or fear or should, I encourage you to hop on our website, and we have what's called the Navigating Challenging Dialogue Primer, which is free. It's 18 minutes. And you can take that, you can go through that, and you can really learn how to distill your thoughts down to what are actual facts. It's a great resource for folks, and I encourage you to take a look at that.
So Beth, the crux of this is something that we repeat often, is that trust is built one conversation at a time and one behavior at a time. And people learn about you with the consistency that you do and say things. They learn who you are, what to expect from you, and what to believe in the moment from you based on how consistent you are with the things you say and the things you do. So is there anything that, can be added to that statement,
Well, I think one thing that happens is you're going to, like Sasha said, you're a compassionate person, right? You're an empathetic person. You're going to have your own range of emotions around every topic, particularly during the now times, right? The questions, some of the big questions I hear people are getting. How are you going to keep me from getting sick? What about childcare? When are we going back into the office? Will I still be able to work from home at all? What about my program? What about budget cuts? What about furlough? Right? All of those things. And so one of the components of that is understanding that the only person I can manage is myself. People are going to have their reaction to the truth. And part of our job as leaders, part of our work as humans, is to trust other people to find the resources or the support they need to be able to learn about their whole own emotional life themselves, right? Their social and emotional intelligence to be able to work that out on their own. And the person you can manage is yourself. So getting clean and clear on your own emotions so that you're not bringing your upset, your fears, your worries into the dialogue while you're answering these big questions for the people that are leaning into you. It's an ominous job for a leader or a manager or a friend or a colleague or a parent or a sibling or son or daughter of somebody who's in panic mode, a parent. It's a big job. But getting clean and clear in your own thoughts and your own energy before you engage in that is essential.
So there's also like the flip side of that, trust is eroded when you behave with, less than candid, through dishonesty or political behavior, what we call political behavior. And what we mean by that is manipulating other people to do or think differently than if they had the truth, right? This is, the strategizing, if I say this and they behave this way, it'll set me up in this way. It's a way to actually break trust. And trust is it's a commodity that is limited in scope. If you build it up, you can erode it and you can get back to zero where trust is absolutely not present. So Beth, do you have anything to expand on that thought?
Well, and trust, when this dawned on me, I was like, oh my gosh, this is such a huge thing for me to get my head around. I Right now, I barely know many of you. I know a lot of you, but I barely know some of you. I would trust you right now to, if we were in the same room, I could go to the restroom and leave my purse in the room, and I trust that nobody's going to steal my wallet, right? While I leave the room. Do I trust you to pick my grandchild up at daycare and drive him home? I'm not sure. Do I trust you to get my very precious grant application in the mail by 5 o'clock on the day it's due? Not sure about that. I don't yet know. So when we talk about trust is built one conversation at a time, one action at a time, we're also talking about there are levels of trust. So some of you may be saying, I have a very trusting relationship with my staff or my team or my peers or my, administration leadership of my organization, except for the stakes get higher depending on what we're talking about, particularly when we're talking about financial health and well-being, physical health and well-being, a sense of safety. Those are kind of the key things that are really, the stakes get a little higher on the trust level. And so remember, even though you're walking in the room going, these folks all trust me, it may be a different scenario when the stakes are different, when what we're talking about is different. So think about trust in terms of levels that get built, and then it's super easy to erode and topple the whole thing all at once when you promise something or commit to something or put something out there that is not a fact.
Yeah. Transparency about facts are so important. It's so important that facts are transmitted in a way where people have all the information they may need to make their own decisions, and they can look at you as being a solid source of true things. But there's also like a time and a place for everything. One of the things that comes up a lot for us is talking about being vulnerable, vulnerability as a leader, meaning, that people know that you're not ironclad, that there are things that could hurt you, that are things that you could lose. And so being vulnerable is a very, very powerful part of building trust. However, there is a part of, quote, what I call it performative vulnerability. And this is a great way to destroy trust, performative vulnerability. And it's sharing information with the intention of getting a reaction, trying to get people to relate to you differently than they normally would, right? An example of that is that you have some bad news and you lead with how much it's going to suck for you. It's like, you think it's going to be hard for you. Well, let me tell you about how hard it is for me. This is not a great way to dive into sharing bad news. Beth, do you want to blow
I want to blow that up?
Do you want to blow that up?
I want to blow it up. I absolutely do. I worked at an organization many years ago, and we just started this bunch of fiscal trouble that was really difficult because of changing factors in the marketplace and a whole bunch of things. And there was a couple scenarios that stuck out for me. One was when the leaders led with everybody was going to have to take a percentage of a pay cut, but they led with the fact that they had each taken a $10,000 pay cut, and that they were going to feel the burden too, and it was going to impact them. their thought process, which could appear to have been a really great one at face value, was that they were going to show their burden, right? And people were going to relate to that and feel empathy for them, and then they were going to take the medicine themselves a little less challenging of a way. The impact ended up being, oh my God, you're taking a $10,000 hit. How much do you make? How much money do you make? You must make so much more than me if you're voluntarily taking a $10,000 hit. Didn't work great. Another challenge was when I was on the leadership team, and we decided, and it was a good decision, that we were going to give transparency to the budget, right? We were going to talk about it so people could see it, because then people would be able to take action on it. The risk was that people would get distracted, get worried, get upset. Maybe people would look for jobs. People might leave. Like, would people dig in and work harder when they actually could see the budget, or would they get in their head about it? That's a really tough one. And it requires a lot of education and a lot of norm setting around it. It requires letting people know, and then not trying to sugarcoat the bad news or the difficult news or the facts. I mean, a budget is facts when it's compared to actuals. So not trying to sugarcoat that too much, or what Sasha's talking about, performative vulnerability, like presented in a way that's going to get people to do something, right? That's the difficult piece with the vulnerability. Vulnerability needs to just be authenticity. I like that word way better. It's not rolling over, showing your belly, crying, wringing your hands, and hoping it will inspire people to do things out of guilt. It's simply saying, this is tough news for me to share.
Yeah. There is a time and place for sharing as well as for just listening.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing when to share those, personal stories, or, the way things make you vulnerable. It's a very, it's subtle, but I would say that your key guiding principle in that is, when you share those stories, you're not getting anything out of it. You're not getting a benefit from sharing the story. If you're sharing the story, it is for the benefit of the person sitting across from you, and not for yourself, to relieve your discomfort, to make them feel sorry for you, to make them behave in a different way. That is like the measuring stick of sharing these kinds of vulnerable personal stories.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Beth, there's a framework. We've shared it a couple of times, but I think it really bears repeating.
Yes.
This is the framework of answering unanswerable questions. And it's a 3-part one. This is what I know. This is what I don't know. And this is what I can't talk about. This is transparency about the facts, transparency about the facts that you don't have, and maybe they don't even exist. And just being clear about things you can't talk about. There are things that you cannot talk about for a variety of reasons. It could be because of company policies. It could be because of other people. It should all gossip definitely falls in this category. It's like avoiding gossip is an enormously important thing to do if you want to build trust in your organization. Don't talk about people who aren't in the room. So, Beth, do you want to expand on those points?
Well, I think just diving into each one of them a little bit. So this is what I know. Those are the facts, right? Those are the things you can see. I don't know how many people are here in California. I know a few of you are and a few of you aren't, but the governor here, excuse me, has been coming out with bits of information and budget thoughts and how things are going to go. And I think he even put out some budget guidance in the past 24 hours or so. And so that has impact for a lot of people, a lot of our clients, particularly who either, excuse me, work for the state or are impacted by state budgets. So a lot of questions are going to come up about what does this mean for us? So what do I know? When you're sharing that news, what you know are the facts that are presented. Things you may not know are absolutely the questions that you get around, well, what if he says we have to cut this? Or what if he says this funding isn't going to happen? Or who's going to get laid off? Or are we going to get furloughed or are we going to get laid off? Or are we all fine? I mean, it may not impact your people at all. But you may not know that yet, right? The guidance just came out within the past 24 hours. I don't think it's earth-shattering, so don't everybody go Google it. I think it's just more talk about what might be, but I'm using it as an example. So those are like the things you don't know yet. We got, this is what we have, these facts, and we need to do some modeling. We're not exactly sure how prescriptive it is or if we have room to make decisions within it. That could be an answer. Those are the things you don't know. When are we going to come back to work? Well, what we know is such and such a date is when we're supposed to go into level 2 and we are contained under level 2. So if that happens, then that's when we'll go back to work. What we don't know is how we're going to do it, what the schedule is going to look like, how it's going to impact people that don't yet have childcare, and if in fact it's even actually going to happen on that date or if that's just a schedule. What can't we talk about right now? Those are the things like Sasha said. There may be individual personnel decisions involved. There may be HIPAA confidentiality involved, right? Someone may ask you a question, well, what about Susie? She has a low immune whatever, thing. She's on the high risk factor. That's a that piece of information on personnel that I'm not at liberty to discuss, just like I would not discuss your personal information with other people. So that's the framework. And the more that you can get that framework in your head, and I just whacked myself, and formulate what you're going to say around those 3 topics, so that when you go into these conversations or you get stopped in the hall or you get a Zoom call or whatever, I keep saying it like we're actually in an office, stopped in the hall, not happening to many people unless it's your partner wandering around. When you get those surprise, we call them surprise dialogues, the more you can have rehearsed this framework and thought about these questions and put them into this container, the less you're going to get pulled by emotion and thrown off kilter, and all of a sudden you realize that you just said a whole big pile of things that you really did not want to say in that moment.
So Beth, we got some questions.
I love questions, you know that.
I know you're all about questions. I love it.
Are they answerable?
We're going to find out. Let's see if they're answerable questions. All right, so question number 1, what to do if employees want an answer even if you've advised them that there is no firm answer?
That's a great question. What do you do? I mean, like, I want people to think about that for a minute. Based on what we've said, if someone asks you a question and you have utilized the framework, right? This is what I know. This is what I don't know. These are the things that I can't talk about right now. But they keep hounding you with that question. They keep wanting an answer because it's really hard for them to accept that there's no answer. I'm looking to see how many people have been on previous calls or come to our trainings. But what kind of tools can you use then? You can ask an open-ended question. You can get curious. Tell me what about the things that I've told you you're still struggling with, right? Say more about your concern. Someone asked a question, can you talk about possibilities? You mean, do you mean modeling out, scenarioing out? Well, if this happens, we could do X. If this happens, we could do X. If this happens, this might be the opportunity. I'm thinking that's what you might mean, Jen. If that's the case, if talking about like these are the three options that we're going to have, these are the three levers that we're going to be able to pull, to use, you know, we're either going to go this way. Yeah, like these three things could happen based on what we know. You could talk about that if in fact you know that those are the three things you are absolutely going to do, right? If we don't get this grant, then we're going to do X. If we get partially funded on the grant, we're going to do B. If we get fully funded on the grant, then we're going to do this. If those are firm and you're committed to them, then absolutely. Otherwise, it goes into the next category, which is, you know, because we don't know the status of getting the grant, we don't know what the next steps are going to be. That's something you have to decide. You just have to make sure, because people, when they're super hungry for an answer to an answerable question, what you say might happen suddenly becomes the truth for them. They bank on it. They hang their hat on it. They make decisions based on it because it takes them out of discomfort. It's human. It's because they're human, not because they're bad.
You know, it is. So to expand on that a little bit, Beth, when people talk about potential levers that you can pull, the thing is that we never know what the outcome is going to be. We speculate, we have an idea, we can look back at past performance, past behaviors, past etc., but you actually do not know what is going to happen. In software development, part of the development process is the testing process and doing bug hunts. Because even though you have highly paid engineers who are experts at writing code, there is most likely going to be unintended outcomes in the creation of software or in anything you do. And it's like, I'm an amateur baker, and I measure the temperature of each loaf of bread, even though I've baked dozens and dozens of loaves of bread. Because I'm like, it should be at 206 degrees after being in the oven for 33 minutes. However, there's a chance that it didn't. So I always stick a thermometer in there just to make sure. You never know what the outcome is going to be. So promising an outcome based on a lever that you pulled is at minimum disappointment territory.
Well, and isn't that the beauty? If we can find the beauty in the time that we're living in right now, like if you had told me February, you know, whatever, 23rd, that we were going to be doing and working and living like we are right now, I would have never known. I have clients that we worked on strategic plans for hours that are like back shelved because they had really good ideas of what they were going to have, what was going to happen this year, what the work plan was going to look like, what individual tasks were going to be, what they're going to accomplish, and what what revenues and funding they were going to get to, which no longer makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so next question.
Good question.
How do we continue to message to direct reports the same, we don't have more info, without losing their trust?
Yeah. I feel like we kind of covered that. The challenge is that if you do have more info and there are things you cannot talk about right now and you don't put a pin in that, make that a fact, then they are not going to trust you that you are not withholding information. As leaders of an organization, as managers, as people, you do have a different level of privilege to some information that is just not, for whatever reason, it's not ready to be shared yet. We have to get past feeling guilty about that. It's particularly hard for people that either get promoted up through the ranks, right? So the people that you are withholding, quote unquote, withholding information from because you can't yet share it are, former friends or current friends. That's one of the places where it gets really tricky and you feel deceitful. But the truth of the matter is, and I say, Sasha's heard me say this 100 times, the minute you endorse that paycheck and you sign it, you are agreeing to be a steward for the things that need to happen within your organization. And so if there is information that for legal reasons, human resource reasons, financial risk factor reasons is not ready for prime time, you need to get to a place where you're super comfortable saying, there is information we are not prepared to share at this time. And when it is available, we will be sharing it. You need to be comfortable saying that and then allowing people to deal with their emotion and discomfort around it. They're going to keep trying to find out. Super intriguing to try and find out what you don't know because you're feeling left out. So that's a boundary issue. It's just being able to say it and let people figure out how they're going to manage it themselves.
Okay. Are you ready for the next one?
I'm super ready.
All right. Okay, so what supports do you recommend implementing to reduce staff fears of becoming ill when they return to work during the pandemic? Wow.
Yeah, that's a tough one because there's a lot of unknown in that, right? Tons of unknown. And I feel like somebody's really looking, whoever asked this great question, and I feel like you're looking for a prescription for this, and I would be too. Like, tell us what to say, Beth. And Sasha, you want to go to the facts. This is what we know. Based on what we know, these are the steps we are going to take. This is what we don't know, right? There's a lot. I mean, I'm not saying sit down and say everything you don't know, but these are the things that we don't yet know, if there are things you don't yet know. And if there's things you can't talk about right now, I'm not sure what exactly that would be, but maybe people's individual risk factors come up or whatever, and they're not appropriate for a public forum. Some people may need accommodations around that. But I think we're all walking around with that fear. right? It's invisible. Where is it? Am I going to get it? How do I trust these people? You need to be clear in the fact that you cannot. I used to work with this fantastic risk management guy. We had an organization that had a lot of risk management issues because of the type of events that we were doing. And he used to say all the time, never use the word, we will keep you safe. You cannot guarantee anyone's safety. You never can. It's not a possibility. Anything could happen. They could be walking to work and a plane could crash into the building. Like, it could be so beyond COVID. You cannot keep your people safe from this or from any other kind of bizarre thing that is outside of our control. But these are the things we are doing. These are what we are putting in place. We're following the guidance. We're following the regulations to the best of our ability. If you have any individual concerns, please bring them up with me or HR privately. But for right now, this is what we know. Yeah. And you just have to keep repeating that.
Yeah, I would definitely, you cannot keep another person from being afraid, and sugarcoating the seriousness of what is happening right now, saying that, you know, like, we're all wearing masks, it'll be fine, or we're washing our hands, it'll all be fine. Stick to the fact of what is being implemented to rise to the challenge, and be open to answering their questions.
Mm-hmm.
If they say, I read in this report, be open to hearing it and having a discussion based on the facts around that information.
Mm-hmm.
But you cannot reduce another person's fear. You can be transparent about all the things that you're doing to minimize risk.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there's two things I want to say. One is that, you know, we also need to empower people to manage their own scenario. So you and your organization, your leadership team can have influence over how safe people are, right? You can have influence over doing what's within your circle of influence to reduce fear based on the things you're going to put in place. But you also need to empower people so that they are becoming responsible and accountable for doing their part. And this is the second piece. Some people might not come back to work. They might not. They may choose something different. They may choose, and I don't know what those choices are. And we also don't have any control over that. People need to be empowered to make their own decision around this. And it's definitely sad when we lose people. It's hard when we lose valuable people and nobody wants to do it. But if somebody is fearful to the point where it's going to be incredibly difficult for them to return, be open to the fact that they may not choose to return.
Okay, we have one more question, Beth.
Yay.
Advice for an org transition from...
Huh? I'll have to answer it for 20 minutes.
You're going to have to answer it for 20 minutes. Well, here's the great news. I think this is going to be a super short answer. Advice for an org transitioning from in-office work norms to a distributed workforce. We did an entire webinar on this called Managing Remotely Doesn't Have to Suck, where we gave all of our best practices for working remotely. It's up on our website.
You can listen to it. You can get all the resources. And this week we're going to be announcing our newest, what is it, Sasha? Resource thing.
Oh yeah, sorry. The managing, I'm going to get the name wrong. Managing Remotely Toolkit. Yeah, virtual management toolkit.
Which
there
is
you have it.
It's the site on our website. There's a series of web-based trainings that we're offering based on that to really help people, because the reality is, right, we don't want to be teaching you tools that you're only going to learn during this short period of time. We want to be teaching you tools that are going to sustain you regardless of whether you're managing remotely, managing in the office, managing through crisis and change. I have a feeling that regardless of when we go, quote unquote, back to work, we're still going to be going through big change for a long period of time. Andrea just popped in and put all the replays in the series are available at the website in the chat. So grab a hold of that, share freely. You do not have to have participated to go back and listen to any of them. We want to make sure that we're being of service and in service to what people need right now. So they are available and hanging out there for you to take advantage of. Does anybody have any other questions that have come up for you while we've been talking, or a scenario that you want to put forward that we can, and you can send them privately to Sasha, or you can send them to the whole entire group, and we can change your name to protect the innocent as we go through it.
I just got a question, Beth. Okay. Here it is. What do you do when you're doing most of these things, but you work for a boss that sucks at managing? Send them to us.
Yeah, send them to us.
Send them to us
for some coaching. You know, coincidentally, we are doing on June 2nd, we're going to be doing managing the political art of the non-political art of managing on June 2nd. Mm-hmm. And so that's going to be a great one for you to attend. It's challenging when you have a boss that sucks at communicating facts in a really clear and succinct way. My guess would be, without knowing too much about the person, that they are really in the place where they want to help people come out of discomfort, right? They want people to feel good. They want people to be comfortable. They want people to like them. They want to relieve their own discomfort around the discomfort that others may be feeling. This is a nuancy thing. So we try really hard to talk about not just what's here, but what's under here, right? So people are like, oh, he, she, they just don't want people to be unhappy. No, that's the symptom. The reality is they don't want to feel the discomfort of people being unhappy, and what that means for their sense of self, what it means for their sense of connection, what it means for their ego and their reputation. They want to avoid that. So I would just recommend, in the managing up way, that maybe you say, you know, I took this training, and this is a framework that they talked about, and I'm wondering how it might be for you to lean into this and kind of prepare the information that we need to give out within this framework, and I'll even sit with you and talk you through it. That would be a great opportunity, and it would take some courage on your part, but this person might be really grateful.
So there's a little nuance to the question. The person who asked the question says that this unskillful manager doesn't really worry too much about COVID and believes he's getting a lot done. And if people talk about it, you know, especially about how to protect themselves in their work situation, it is seen as talking about COVID too much.
Huh.
Yeah. I definitely, from my point of view, this kind of a dynamic I believe comes from a manager being overwhelmed, right? This is just like a denial of things being, of what the facts are. And so because they cannot give you a comfortable answer, because they cannot protect you, my suspicion is that they are pretending it's not a big deal. So
Because
that's,
they're in fear. They're
yeah,
in fear.
that they're in fear. They're
They're
in fear. And what you're seeing is a fear-based response.
And we can't manage other people's fears.
Yeah.
But we can provide them with a framework in terms of if he or she wants to be impactful with people. This is something that you learned. I also believe firmly that modeling the behavior you desire in others is a fantastic tool. Fantastic. So being able to have opportunities where you're able to model this framework. So maybe you could ask to deliver part of the information, or you can just do it for your team. Yeah. It's really tricky, but you could even, you know, if there's an all hands meeting or an all staff meeting or whatever, having a check-in meeting with your team after that, where you're kind of asking, hey, what did you hear? What was concerning to you? And then you're using the framework to answer those questions.
Yeah. I will follow up though, is that I believe that it's like the only person you can control is yourself. And I believe every individual needs to make quality decisions about their own safety, health, and well-being. So and this is a blanket statement, no matter what you're doing, you should not be putting yourself in jeopardy. If you are being put into an unsafe position, that is a completely different conversation. Yeah. Because we all want you to do what you can to make sure that you are healthy, well, you know, your well-being is, and for you and your family and everyone you care about, is intact.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's all we got today, Beth.
Yeah. Thank you for participating. Thank you for showing up for these. It's, I love them, and I love the questions that people ask. Like we said, next week, we're going on vacation for the week.
But not together.
We're going to have Memorial Day cookouts, and we're going to do visit friend. No, we're not doing any of that. No. We're going to do more of what we're doing. But we will be back on June 2nd for the non-political art of managing up. So we're thrilled and thankful for each and every one of you. We're so glad that you're doing the management thing using some of the stuff that we've had. If you've had good results with some of our suggestions, please shoot us an email and let us know, because we love to get your feedback. And if there's a topic you want to hear about, let us know too. Andrea says you can sign up right now for the June 2nd call at the link that you generally follow, or the one that you put in the chat. All right, everybody have a great weekend, and we will, which is not for 4 days, but you can go now for 2 days. And we will talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.
See ya.